Have you ever found yourself wishing you could be like Jordan? The kind of person who walks through rejection, betrayal, and loss without breaking stride. The one who doesn't need to raise their voice to be respected, who carries a quiet strength that doesn't seek attention but commands it. For a long time, I believed that to become unshakable like him, I had to numb everything inside me. I had to be cold, distant, emotionless. But I was wrong. True power doesn't come from building walls. It comes from doing the work within. Because the truth is, most of us aren't falling apart because of what happens to us. We're falling apart because of how we carry what happens to us. The silent pressure to be strong, to be fine, to perform emotionally even when we're exhausted. It's what's crushing us, not the world itself. That's why this video matters. This is your daily motivation to stop pretending and to start healing. Not by toughening your exterior, but by exploring what's buried inside. Not by escaping pain, but by meeting it with awareness. Because healing isn't about becoming bulletproof. It's about becoming conscious. And that more than anything is what makes you untouchable. So if you're tired of being ruled by reactions, of being defined by what hurt you, stay with me. In this space, we don't escape. We evolve. And this isn't just another dose of daily motivation to get you through the morning. This is a shift, a beginning, a return to yourself. The illusion of strength, why avoiding pain makes you weaker. Have you ever stopped to wonder why, even when life looks okay from the outside, you still feel like you're carrying something heavy deep inside? You're doing everything you're supposed to. You're showing up, working hard, keeping your cool, smiling when expected. And yet when the noise fades and the lights are off, there's that ache, the kind that doesn't scream, but quietly bleeds. You've been told that strength is about control, about holding it all together, about showing no weakness, no tears, no cracks. So you built the mask. You learned how to respond with, "I'm fine," even when your insides are screaming for space. You made it your job to be strong for everyone. You became the rock. But here's the truth. Nobody told you. That kind of strength is a lie, and worse, it's a trap. Real strength isn't found in pretending you're unaffected. Real strength is found in honesty, in stillness. In the moments you stop running from yourself and finally sit with what hurts. Carl Jung said, "We are not what happens to us. We are what we choose to become." And what you've been choosing without realizing is to become distant from your own emotions, thinking that would protect you. It doesn't. You don't need more armor. You need daily motivation that teaches you how to put the armor down. Let's stop here for a second. Let's question the myth that being unshakable means being unaffected. It doesn't. Being unshakable means you've been through the storm and made peace with it. It means you know your triggers, your fears, your stories, and you don't run from them anymore. You face them. You sit with them. You grow through them. That's what emotional sovereignty looks like. Because here's another truth. What hurts you most isn't what people do to you. It's what their actions awaken inside of you. It's the echo, the trigger, the old wound that was never healed, just buried. And so we go back to the beginning. What if everything you believed about strength was wrong? What if strength isn't found in suppression, but in surrender? Not in holding back emotion, but in feeling it fully without shame. Not in always appearing composed, but in letting yourself fall apart in safe spaces so you don't explode in unsafe ones. That's the kind of message most people never hear. That's why so many burn out trying to be strong. But you're here now, and that means something in you already knows the path forward isn't perfection. It's presence. That's why this is your daily motivation, not to pretend, but to pause. Not to mask up, but to face what's real. Because once you learn to sit with pain, to greet it like an old friend instead of a monster, you begin to understand that it was never the enemy. It was a signal, a story, a scar. And like every scar, it had something to teach you. The goal isn't to feel nothing. The goal is to understand everything. To know where your patterns come from, why your heart races in certain situations, why rejection stings deeper than it should, why silence from someone you love feels like a wound. These aren't random. They're invitations to look inward, to listen, to learn. You don't have to be the person who always smiles. You can be the one who heals, the one who chooses to show up not as a character playing strength, but as a soul reclaiming it. That's the kind of power that doesn't fade. That's the kind of strength no one can take from you. You want to be unshakable. Start by being honest with yourself, with your story, with what hurts. Because pain is not the problem, avoidance is. So let this be your new definition of daily motivation. Not a cheerleading chant to help you fake it for one more day, but a call to courage. A reminder that you're allowed to feel, and that feeling is not weakness, it's wisdom. And when you stop running, when you finally face the weight you've carried alone, you'll realize you were never broken, just buried. And now finally, you're ready to rise. The inner wound, what really hurts, isn't what you think. You think. The pain you're feeling is because of what someone else did. The cold silence, the harsh words, the betrayal you didn't see coming. You tell yourself, if they hadn't done that, I'd be okay. And so you focus all your energy outward, blaming, resenting, replaying the moment again and again. But here's the truth. No one wants to face. What hurts you isn't what they did. It's what it touched inside you, Carl Jung once said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That is exactly what's happening to you. You think you're reacting to them, but you're really reacting to what you've buried. The wound you never looked at. The story you never rewrote. And the longer you avoid it, the more power it has over you. That's why a comment from a stranger can break your confidence. Why someone leaving your message unread can spiral you into self-doubt. Why a quiet moment alone can feel like suffocation instead of peace. Because it's not just about what's happening, it's about what it's activating. And until you learn to look at the wound instead of the trigger, you'll stay stuck in a loop. Hurt, react, recover, repeat. So how do you break the cycle? By doing what most people never do, turning inward. The world teaches us to solve pain by changing what's outside. Change the job. Change the partner. Change the city. But no matter where you go, you'll find the same patterns, the same triggers, the same ache that refuses to die. Because the real work isn't out there. It's in here. This is your daily motivation to stop pointing the finger outward and start asking harder questions inward. Why does that specific word cut so deep? Why does being ignored feel like punishment? Why does disappointment feel like a personal failure? The answer lies in your emotional history, in what you were taught to believe about yourself, in the versions of you that you locked away to survive. You see, your pain didn't begin with this moment. It began with the moment you were told directly or indirectly that you weren't enough, that you had to earn love, that your voice was too much, that your emotions were inconvenient. And now you're still carrying that child inside, still trying to prove yourself, still trying to earn what should have been given freely. This is where healing starts. Not with forgiveness of others, but with a radical act of self-truth. To admit that you're still bleeding, that the mask of strength hasn't stopped the pain, that the armor you wear is heavy and it's not working anymore. That doesn't make you fragile. That makes you aware. And awareness is power. Because when you finally look at the wound, not just the person who triggered it, you begin to take your power back. You stop waiting for others to fix what they never broke. You stop expecting closure from people who were never capable of giving it. You begin the work of self-repair. This is where your true strength is born. Not in pretending nothing hurts, but in knowing exactly why something hurts, and choosing not to let it define you. You may not control what happened to you, but you do control what you do with it now. So what does that look like? It looks like choosing stillness when the urge to lash out rises. It looks like pausing before reacting, asking, what part of me feels unsafe right now? It looks like writing letters You don't send crying in rooms no one sees and feeling emotions you were taught to suppress. It looks like taking off the mask and facing what's underneath, not to judge it, but to finally understand it. And when you do something shifts, you realize that the world will continue to bring moments that test you, shake you, even break you, but they no longer own you, because you've finally begun the work of knowing yourself. That is the core of emotional freedom. That is the foundation of healing. And that is your daily motivation today. Not to avoid pain, but to decode it, to use it, to rise from it. So the next time someone says something that stings, or life throws a curveball that makes you flinch, pause. Don't just react. Ask yourself, what part of me just got touched? What wound is asking to be seen? Because once you see the wound clearly, you are no longer its prisoner. You become its healer. Owning the shadow, you can't heal what you won't face. We all carry shadows, not the kind you see in the mirror, not the literal absence of light, but the hidden parts of ourselves we were told were unacceptable, unworthy, unlovable. The emotions we pushed down, the needs we denied, the versions of ourselves we silenced in order to fit in, survive, or be loved. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, the unconscious part of our personality that holds everything we've repressed. And here's the brutal truth. You can't heal what you refuse to face. You can't outrun your shadow. You can't outperform it. You can't distract yourself into peace. No amount of positive thinking will erase what you're unwilling to confront. And the more you ignore your inner darkness, the more power it gains over your life. Why? Because the shadow doesn't disappear. It adapts. It hides in your habits. It controls your reactions. It speaks through your relationships. It turns into anxiety, burnout, addiction, self-hate, and toxic patterns you keep repeating even when you know better. Jung once said, "The shadow is 90% pure gold." What he meant was this: within your darkness lies the very material of your transformation. Your anger holds your boundaries. Your jealousy holds your unmet needs. Your fear holds your untapped potential, but only if you have the courage to look at it. But pain isn't the problem. Avoidance is. This is your daily motivation, not to feel better, but to feel deeper. Not to be stronger by denial, but to be freer by awareness. Here's the shift: you stop judging your darkness. You start studying it. You stop asking, why am I like this, and start asking, what is this trying to show me? Because everything you repress doesn't disappear. It waits until one day life forces it to the surface, through heartbreak, through illness, through a breakdown you didn't see coming. And in that moment, you either break open or break apart. But you don't have to wait for collapse. But it's real. And everything real has power. That's how healing begins. Not by cutting out your pain, but by pulling it close. By recognizing that the parts of you you've buried the deepest are the ones that need your love the most. So what does this actually look like in real life? It looks like pausing when you're triggered instead of reacting. It looks like journaling what you're ashamed to say out loud. It looks like asking yourself, what am I afraid they'll see in me? And then choosing to see it for yourself on purpose. It looks like forgiving yourself for being human, for not knowing what you didn't know, for doing what you had to do to survive. And when you start living this way, something radical happens. The world stops having so much power over you. You stop chasing validation. You stop fearing rejection. You stop being controlled by people's opinions because you've already faced the harshest critic of all, yourself, and survived. That's real resilience. That's real strength. And it's rooted in clarity, not armor. This is your daily motivation, not to be your best self, but to finally meet your real self. The one underneath the mask. The one who's been waiting patiently, silently, hoping one day you'd stop pretending and start listening. Because once you face your shadow, it stops running your life. And once you integrate it, you become untouchable. Not because nothing affects you, but because nothing owns you. You are not just the light, you are the full spectrum. And when you accept that you don't just survive, you awaken individuation, the birth of the untouchable self. You've faced the pain. You've started seeing the wound not as weakness, but as a doorway. You've begun the terrifying and beautiful process of meeting your shadow instead of running from it. And now something inside you is shifting. There's a silence beginning to grow in you. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of presence. Not the emptiness of suppression, but the spaciousness of integration. That quiet voice that once whispered, "Something's not right," is now starting to say, "You're getting close." This right here is the beginning of something Carl Jung called individuation. And this journey, it's not linear. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. You don't wake up one day and suddenly become whole. You unbecome first. You let go of the persona, the mask you wear for the world. You question every belief you inherited but never chose. You grieve the versions of yourself that were built on trauma, fear, or obligation. You let old identities crumble, and in that ruin, something sacred is born. A self that doesn't need to be loved to feel worthy. A self that doesn't need to be understood to feel real. A self that doesn't need to control everything to feel safe. This is the untouchable self, and it does not emerge through force. It emerges through fire, through the inner collapse that happens when you stop trying to be someone you're not. Jung was clear. Individuation is not perfection. It's not becoming better. It's becoming whole. And when you reach this point, you realize something profound. Nothing outside you can define you anymore. Not rejection, not praise, not failure, not success. Because you're no longer reacting to life from your wounds. You're responding from your wholeness, but you're here now. And if you've made it this far, you've already walked through things most people never even look at. You've sat in discomfort. You've faced your triggers. You've stopped asking, "How do I get rid of this?" and started asking, "What is this trying to show me?" That's how individuation begins, with a question, not an answer. With a willingness to descend, not just rise. So let's talk about the reality of this process. But what you gain is sovereignty. You begin to attract people who meet you in your depth. Conversations that nourish you. Silence that heals you. Work that aligns with your truth. And most importantly, you begin to trust yourself. You no longer need to perform or protect or pretend. You just are. And that just becomes enough, more than enough. It becomes your anchor. This is not the kind of strength the world often applauds because it's quiet, it's invisible to the eye. But it's unshakable. It's the kind of strength that keeps you rooted when everything around you is chaos. The kind that lets you speak truth without fear. Walk away without guilt and love without losing yourself. This is not a version of you that was built in a day. This is the version that rose from the ashes, from your grief, from your pain, from your deepest truths. This is your daily motivation from this point forward. Not to be better, but to be real. Not to win more love, but to stop betraying yourself to keep it. Not to gain more approval, but to gain more awareness. Because in that awareness, in that clarity, you don't just survive life, you start to create it. And that's the paradox of individuation. You go inward to come alive. You face the darkest parts of you to find the light no one can take away. You become untouchable. Not by building higher walls, but by becoming too whole to collapse. So ask yourself right now, who am I when I no longer perform? Who am I when I stop apologizing for my truth? Who am I when I stand in my center with nothing left to hide? Because the moment you answer that with clarity, not perfection, is the moment your transformation begins. Welcome home. You've just walked through 4 parts of a journey most people never begin. You've faced pain not as punishment, but as a guide. You've looked at your shadow not to erase it, but to embrace it. You've unlearned what you thought made you strong and discovered a deeper truth. Your strength was never about avoidance. It was about awareness. Carl Jung taught us that the process of becoming whole is not for the faint of heart. It's for the few willing to stand in the fire and say, "I'm ready to meet myself even in my darkness." If you've made it here, you're one of them. And I see you. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too much or not enough. You are in the process of becoming. And that process is sacred. So take a moment right now to honor that, to breathe into your body, to say silently or aloud, "I'm proud of how far I've come, even if no one else sees it." And if this message touched you, if it stirred something in you, don't let that feeling fade. Let it move you into action. Comment below, "I choose to become whole." Let that be your public declaration. Let's create a thread of people who are done pretending, done shrinking, done apologizing for their sensitivity, their depth, their humanity. And if you know someone who's struggling, who's hurting, who's hiding behind strength, share this video with them. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real.